so much for investing your time with us and being here and participating on this conference. My name is Ivona Krstevska, and I will be moderating the last session of this conference, and this is building a cultural cooperation. Very interesting topic. We'll be talking about the most significant, most interesting aspects we need to strengthen to directly increase the cultural cooperation between the countries, North Macedonia and Greece. But before we go to the panel introduction, I will first check the temperature on Zoom. Not in the room, but in this case in Zoom. Zoom, hello guests, hello fellows, hello friends and youth workers. How are you? How are you? Are you prepared? If you are prepared, please wave to the camera. Woohoo! Okay. Do you have questions ready for this panel? Wave to the camera. Okay. Nice. Perfect. So we'll look forward. You already know the format. How is it going? We'll start first with the panel discussions. I will introduce the guest speakers, and then we'll have time for question and answer from the audience, in this case, from the Zoom. Our goal is to elaborate different aspects, opinions, standing points to build cultural cooperation. And then the second half of our time today, we will have more time to discuss about it. Yes. And now I will start introducing our guests. First, our first guest speaker, Associate Professor Anna Ivanovska-Deskovska from Faculty of Agriculture in Skopje. Hello, Ms. Deskova. You work closely with our second guest speaker, Dr. Kalliopi Amigdalou, Research Fellow Architecture and Ideology, Cultural Heritage. But now first, Ms. Deskova, we are happy to have you here. The floor is yours. Please, we are looking forward to introduce us closer to the activities you undertook during the collaboration between cultural historians, architectural historians from Greece and North Macedonia, and then we will have Ms. Kalliopi to add more on this. You will also share your presentation with the participants, so the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. There is a minor change. We already prepared a joint presentation with Kalliopi, and Kalliopi will start first, and then I will continue afterwards.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Anna.
Before Ms. Kalliopi, sorry for interrupt you. Before, I will like to introduce you. Ms. Kalliopi Amigdalou, Research Fellow Architecture and Ideology, Cultural Heritage, is an architectural historian. She worked as Maria Sklodowska-Curie Fellow at the Hellenic Foundation for European and Foreign Policy, carrying out postdoctoral research on the politicization of architectural heritage in Southeastern Europe, entitled Architectural Replicas in the Scramble for the Past, Politics of Identity in Istanbul, Athens, and Greece. Ms. Kalliopi, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to participate in this conference, which is very much policy-oriented. It's very much practice-oriented, and we hope that our ideas and our experience are going to be useful for the next generation. And I'm also very happy to be presenting my experience together with Professor Ivanovska from the Architectural School of Skopje. I'm going to share my screen in order to present to you a couple of our activities that spanned over 3 years, from 2015 to 2018. Give me a second. Okay, so I understand. Is it visible to everybody? Are you all okay? Good. So this, as you can see on the first slide, we're going to talk about a collaboration between Skopje and Athens. 3 Macedonian architectural historians and 3 Greek architectural historians participated in this series of events, which started from an individual project that our host already mentioned. It was a Marie Curie project that ended in 2019. But then this collaboration exploded, and by the end of by the end of 2019, we had already participated in a major documentary about Skopje. We had co-organized a major exhibition at Benaki Museum, which related to the reconstruction of Skopje after the 1963 earthquake. We opened that exhibition with a 2-day symposium, international symposium. We managed to attract funding from the Ministry of Culture of Greece and from the city of Skopje and from the Athens Book Capital. And also we accompanied this exhibition with an edited book slash exhibition catalog in which many of the speakers, all of the speakers of the symposium contributed to. So one of the first points I would like to make is, and what I learned from this experience is the value of flexibility and the value of open-ended discussions and collaborations between our two countries, because none of us had imagined when I visited for the first time Skopje and approached Professor Ivanovska for consultation for my individual project, none of us had imagined that we would organize all these actions together by the end of our 3 years. So these are a couple of pictures from my project, which, as was mentioned, was funded by the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions. My first intention was to examine the Skopje 2014 project by the previous Macedonian government, which attempted to, refashion the city in a controversial way, including many references to antiquity, to Baroque, by covering already existing modernist buildings with new facades, with columns, by erecting dozens of monuments and statues in the city, by taking over public space, green spaces. Many of you know that there were dozens of demonstrations in Skopje and all over North Macedonia about this. So this is what triggered my interest for Skopje, because I have been working on nation building and architecture and ideology for the last 10 years. And this is the reason that the reason for which I first approached Professor Ivanovska, and I asked for her opinion. But to my surprise, she very kindly refused to help me specifically with this part of Skopje's history. And what she suggested, what she told me, and what she taught me was that her reaction to this refashioning of the city, this brutal, violent refashioning of the city of the last years, was not to talk about Skopje 2014, but to initiate and carry out a deep and important research about the modernist legacy of Skopje and of North Macedonia, a legacy that you can see partially in the photograph to the right. You can see the telecommunications center, the concrete brutalist building at the back of the image. So what Anna Ivanovska and her colleagues, Jovan Ivanovsky and Vladimir Deskov were doing in Skopje, but in parallel to the multiple demonstrations against the Skopje 2014 project, was that they were changing the subject. They were not focusing on how to resist and defend architecture from the government or from these governmental interventions, but what they were doing was that they were putting forward an alternative. They were putting forward what they considered to be Macedonian architectural heritage, and they were making it visible. So what I learned from this collaboration was that sometimes it's not enough to resist and to react to a hegemonic narrative that you are critical about. But what is more valuable is to propose an alternative way. And I feel that this lesson is very valuable and matches well what you are doing today and what you have been doing yesterday, trying to build bridges rather than just criticizing perhaps the tension between the country. You are proposing a new way at the same time. So my first steps and my first experience in Skopje included this valuable lesson. And when Tassos Teloglu, a prominent investigative journalist, approached me to propose the organization of a documentary for his series Histories for Sky Channel that would present the history of the city of Skopje, putting emphasis on Skopje 2014, I transferred Anna's suggestion that, you know what, we have to include in the documentary the other heritages of Skopje and the other voices, the other historical voices of the city, and not just focus on what we are critical about, not just focus on what we want to fight against. Of course, Tassos Teloglu is a journalist with a deep knowledge of the Balkans and a deep love of the Balkans, and he already shared such a willingness. So the next step for me was to invite Anna to participate in this documentary, and gladly she accepted. So suddenly, from an individual project, we made the second step in participating in a documentary together. One advice that I can offer from this experience with television, apart from the fact that one should be very careful always to collaborate with producers and journalists that are have good intentions and share the same values as you, and Tassos is one of them, is that such media initiatives have a fantastic, a major impact to public opinion. So my scientific publications that were produced as a result of my project might have had, an audience of 100 people. But this documentary that we made together with Tassos Teloglu and Anna and other participants today has more than 15,000 views on YouTube. So this is an idea of how impact can be multiplied through experience with different media. Tassos Teloglu not only invited us and allowed us to present our work through our documentary, through his documentary, but he also cultivated the seed for our next collaboration with Anna, Jovan, Vladimir, and Kostas and Christos, two more architectural historians who joined the collaboration. He asked us why we hadn't considered discussing the contribution of Konstantinos Doxiadis in the rebuilding of Skopje after the 1963 earthquake. This collaboration between our countries, this contribution of a Greek, well-known international urban planner in the reconstruction of Skopje, is a bit known in academic circles, but I think that it wasn't really known in the wider public opinion. So we heroically, I would say, because it ended up being a very big project which demanded a lot of labor, but it was worth it. We approached the Hellenic Institute of Architecture, we approached the Doxiadis archives in Athens, and we asked them if they would be willing to support us in organizing a small exhibition about this. At the same time, we applied for funding by the Greek Ministry of Culture. And the year was, it was the year that 2018, that everything was negotiated between our two countries. The name was being negotiated. There was a lot of tension. We were hearing there were all sorts of views in the media. One month we were optimistic, the other month we were afraid that, you know, this might collapse because it was a very politicized project. But in the end, we made it. The Greek government at the time was very interested in supporting such initiatives between our countries, and we kind of rode the tide. We took a small risk because we invested a lot of personal time in building a funding application and in designing an exhibition, but it worked out in the end. And the city of Skopje also embraced our effort, and what we did, and Anna Ivanovska will tell you more about it, is we joined two research projects into one major exhibition. One part was the Doxiades contribution to the reconstruction of the city, and the other part was the construction of important major buildings in the city center of Skopje following the earthquake. So from that seed, that initial seed and that initial collaboration, suddenly we had the participation of 4, 5 major institutions, 2 municipalities, the municipality of Athens, the municipality of Skopje, a major museum, the Benaki Museum, and we had funding from 3, 4 sponsors. And the exhibition opened in December 2018 by a symposium, an international symposium, as I said in my introduction. The symposium attracted speakers from other countries as well, such as Croatia and Italy. And it was a two-day event. We had a roundtable on the second day. We had coverage by media, and we also had the support of the Athens Book Capital, who promoted and shared our initiative with the wider public. And I think this is more or less my part of the presentation. I think that I will pass on to Anna now. One final lesson that I feel I learned from this collaboration, and it might be useful for all of you, I don't know, is that from this collaboration between 6 people who didn't know each other before, didn't know each other well, I concluded that agreement on the issues that divide us was not a prerequisite for respect, but the other way around. Respect was a prerequisite for agreement. We collaborated for 3 years, but I don't think that we agreed on any of the hot topics that concerned our countries. We didn't feel the need to enter these discussions, and when we did, I don't think that we felt that we could take it to the end, that we could have a final conclusion. So I think that what brought us together, what brought these teams together, was shared values rather than shared opinions. I wanted to share this feeling because I wouldn't want young people to feel that they have to agree in order to collaborate. And that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Dr. Amigdalo, thank you so much for sharing your experience from your personal standing point. Now I will ask Professor Anna Deskova Ivanova from the Faculty of Agriculture. From your experience, can you share or add more on the activities you implemented under the project, and what's your main conclusions? Professor Anna, please share what you have on your mind.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Do you hear me? Yes. You see the presentation? I will continue where Calliope stopped. Good afternoon, everyone, once again. My name is Anna Ivanovska-Deskova, and I'm Associate Professor at the Faculty of Architecture in Skopje, not Agriculture, at the University St. Cyril and Methodius. And I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to participate on this virtual venue and the given opportunity to speak about the collaboration that we have with our colleagues from Athens, like 2 years ago, maybe. I asked Calliope to give the introduction because, as she said, she approached first, and she approached with something different, a different topic than the result. So as she said, we originally met for a different reason, but then our acquaintance grew up to something bigger, to a process that lasted 3 or 4 years and was at the end more meaningful than in the beginning. After several meetings in Athens, which happened mostly during the end of 2017 and 2018, on December 17th, 2018, we opened joint exhibition in the large hall of the Benaki Museum in Athens. As Calliope knows, the team I work with, Jovan Ivanovski and Vladimir Deskov, have quite an experience with organizing exhibitions, but this one was really, really big in format. It was huge and it was very important. It has a lot of material, and really we got a very specific place in the Benaki Museum, and I believe it was extraordinary. So this is a slide from the exhibition, was one nice perspective showing the most of the exhibited material. On the walls, there is a documentary material, there is the story about Doxiadis in Skopje, there are sketches, blueprints, photos, texts, explanations, etc. And in the middle of the space, there is a nice collection of architectural models of different buildings from Skopje. As we already mentioned on several occasions, this was a joint effort, and it was quite a huge effort. And I would like to stress two things. That on the one hand, it was supposed to unite our individual research interest, what we have been doing individually and researching for like a decade or more in our case. So it was the architectural legacy of the renowned Greek architect and urban planner Konstantinos Doxiadis that was presented, or more specifically, his involvement in the conceptualization of the master plan for Skopje after the earthquake. It is on the dark wall in the front and part of the wall on the left. Then fragments of Kenzo Tange's plan for Skopje city center that followed the master plan, which was presented with photographs, models, text, and so on. A selection of the most important architectural outcome that was built during the late 1960s, 70s, and beginning of the 1980s. And in one point of the one space of the hall, the recent architectural context in Skopje at the time. Segments of Skopje 2014 project that Calliope already mentioned, that was trying, and for that matter was succeeding in the time, to disfigure this important late modern architectural legacy of the city. So this was our individual research on the one hand. On the other hand, and this is maybe even more important, the exhibition aimed to put this all content on a public display. We have been researching this and writing about this for quite a while, but this was a chance to put it in Athens for the first time in Athens, and to the audience that has never seen that material before. So this was achieved through the exhibition itself, through the one-day conference that was organized, a roundtable, and 2 guided tours, which attracted quite a lot attention. This is the picture with some of the people visiting the exhibition. So this whole project, the exhibition, the conference, the publication that resulted, the whole process that led to it, that led to result, in our opinion, was a successful example of collaboration. Why was this effort so important for us? At first, it obviously started as a scholar effort, as we said before, and it was research oriented. and when we started, we were not quite aware that eventually it would address to a wider audience, that it would talk to a wider audience, and maybe even have a more profound impact on the society, because it happened in a very, very specific, very specific historical moment. Further on, we started as a collaboration between Calliope and myself. Then we introduced our teams, and then further on along the process, important institutions got involved, because first Calliope needed to obtain resources, to obtain exhibition space. Then we needed resources and logistics to bring all the material to Athens and so on. So on the way, Hellenic Institute of Architecture got involved, and Doxiadis Archives, who are in possession of the archival material, Benaki Museum, who gave us the exhibition hall, the Museum of City of Skopje was involved, the City of Skopje, etc. This collaboration, I think we should emphasize this, was not necessarily result-oriented at the beginning. We didn't know we will make an exhibition. We didn't know we will make a publication or a conference. On the contrary, it was a long process that lasted, that changed on the way, and eventually it led towards the result. And I think it's very important that it led towards a sustainable and still open collaboration. As Calliope said, we have agreements, we had disagreements about the exhibition itself, about other questions, but I think it was a very fruitful collaboration, and it's still open and has potential for future projects together. Another thing that I think both find important is that all of us, we often tend to look up to examples from the West, from somewhere abroad, and to bring them these examples and to consider them important and apply them here. The content of this project addresses a very specific time in the history when former Yugoslavia, in times of extreme global polarization, united in Skopje both the West and the East. The East and the West met in the town that suffered extreme catastrophe and devastation, and many experts from all around the globe, from the both sides of the Iron Curtain, were involved within this process, and one of them was Doxiadis himself, who at the time was a very prominent figure in terms of architecture and urban planning. And what I want to say is that this was a chance, the opportunity to dig deeper into the history and learn from our own history, individual and mutual as well. And since we discovered that we have a lot of things in common, and a lot of, not only this one, but other as well, a lot of issues that we overlap upon. So at the end, the project was entitled The Future as a Project. Once Skopje's future, post-earthquake future, but I think that it also targeted our future, the future of the more present times, and the potential of us working together and having a mutual collaboration. Speaking further of collaboration, it is always great to work in teams. In our case, the team consisted of 6 scholars who initiated this, but it grew further and included also young architects, researchers, students of architecture, museum personnel, and so on. And this is one nice picture of this whole group together. And with this one more slide from the exhibition, I will thank you for the attention. I'll stop here and leave space for discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Zoom participants, I hope you're ready with a question. Prepare your question. It was really fruitful, interesting discussion. Miss Deskova, Professor Ivanovska Deskova. I would like to apologize for saying Ministry of Agriculture. I don't know why, probably I'm too excited about to moderate this conference, especially when I have in front of me doctors and professors. So I'm a little bit confused. I'm really sorry for this. I hope but thank you for sharing all of this. It was really interesting to hear how the spontaneous actually process bring you to achieve these results and we have a results of the mutual cooperation. Thank you so much. At that, I hope that we will have a lot of interesting questions for you, because I already have some that I would like to ask. But now we are going to the third speaker. That's Miss Konstantina Karidi, a Senior Advisor, Resilience and Global Urban Affairs, Vice President, Balkan Beyond Barriers. We can say there is a lot to be said for Ms. Karidi, but I will just briefly inform what Papa as most interesting when I saw your background. Special focus on social resilience and climate transformation, geographical specialization in Balkan and Mediterranean Middle East regions, including post-conflict settings with broad comparative global experience. Ms. Karidi, your opinion on the topic, what are the main pillars we should create in the process of building cooperation between the countries? Key points, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. I think that this conversation is extremely interesting. I followed, as I said earlier, to my fellow panelists, also the conversation in the morning, and I actually want to start from a question that one of the panelists basically put forth then. How far do we know each other, and why are we trying to connect? Like, what are the actual reasons behind? So for us, I would say, in my capacity as Balkans Beyond Borders Vice President, I want to speak in particular, is because there is an urgent need, and there is still this urgent need, to explore the myths and current realities of the Balkan region. So in a way, if you permit me to say, we do know that nation states are built on myths, right? So we call them national myths, and these myths, they bring together people, but they also divide them. But at the same time, what are, let's say, the post-national myths, right? Or realities that connect us. So I guess what we're trying to do through these kind of cooperations and initiatives, like the one we heard before, is to create those bridges in order to help build these, let's call them post-national communities. What are the myths that connect us beyond the nation state, if they connect us? And what are the common realities that connect the citizens of Southeast Europe, but also beyond? So there are a couple of things here to observe over the last, let's say, decade where I've been active in this field. First, I think it's positive news to say that there is more cooperation also between North Macedonia and Greece, but also an expansion, let's say, of the knowledge and of the understanding between the countries of the Western Balkans, Greece, and also, let's say, outside the Balkans, on the way to European integration, which is a really important goal that we try to work on, which is, again, beyond the relations, let's say, between Greece and North Macedonia. At the same time, we can also observe that there is a huge need to break down the stereotypes that still persist. If I say so, let's say, even the word Balkan itself suffers from stereotype. The word is often not used in the Western Balkans, or when it's used, within our region or outside our region, often has those negative stereotypes. At the same time, secondly, those stereotypes are very typical. And I know this sounds like an irony, but what is the vibrant culture of the Balkan region? What are the languages of the Balkans? And do we have the opportunity to hear those languages speak beyond our region? Do we understand each other? Is language a barrier? Yes, it is, to a very large extent. Thirdly, especially in Greece, I have to agree with the previous panelist, there was, and there still is to a very large extent, a huge lack of understanding and knowledge about North Macedonia, about the region of our neighbors. I want to be provocative and say Greece looks only in the West. And because Greece has been looking in the West and belongs supposedly in the West over the last decades, according to the narrative, we didn't look north, we didn't look east, we didn't look south, we only looked west. And that created a horrible basis, let's say, for the continuation of the cultivation of stereotypes. And last but not least, there is still today, and has been affected by the crisis, obviously has been affected by COVID, but also has been affected by this cultivation of stereotypes, a lack of networking opportunities, of collaboration opportunities, a lack of funding, of financing, or a lack of knowledge on how to access this funding and financing. So if we have this reality in our hands, what is it that we do in order to deconstruct and reconstruct those myths? And how can we construct new communities? One element that we identified as Balkans Beyond Borders, and then I will speak also in terms of other, let's say, policy sectors, is that image, culture, is a way to create dialogue. So when we started the initiative of Balkans Beyond Borders, which then became an organization and has been active in the region for 11 years now, we decided that, okay, if we want to open up the dialogue, if we want to create a forum for collaboration and also for conversation, and a forum to break down the silos between the different, let's say, policy groups even between, because there is a huge silo, permit me to say also, which I forgot, but it's really important. There is a lack of collaboration and of dialogue, not only between, let's say, the everyday people or civil society in the countries, but also, and most importantly, even within the countries, between the institutional, let's say, governments, authorities, and civil society, and the creative sector, and the, let's say, people. There is a big gap in the cooperation and collaboration. I have found myself often in many, let's call them institutional conversations, and I see that there are hardly any conversations about the reality, if you want, that people are experiencing. We don't actually hear in institutional conversations, what does networking mean? Why do we need to connect people? Why do young people in the Western Balkans need to travel? Is this important or not? This kind of, let's call them small talk of civil society, doesn't penetrate inside the institutional dialogues where you have conversations about the adjustment, the legal adjustment, and the adoption of the European acquis. Why, when these are separate, however, how can you have the real application of this kind of progressive laws if they are, and their institutionalization within a society? So within this context, Balkans Beyond Borders, we try to take contemporary themes, and that's why I'm relating, let's say, policy with culture, with art. Take a current theme that is relevant to everyone, and not just, let's say, the Balkan region, whether this is COVID, whether this is the crisis of 2008, whether it's the question of language and a number of other contemporary issues, and create this forum for creativity, for art. So through the production of short films and the organization of an international film festival, we created gradually this form of collaboration between different actors. So now, around basically this art, this creativity, we help create a community between artists who are often a group that, as we have seen also during the COVID crisis, they kind of concentrate a lot of problems, social problems, into one small group: lack of funding, often like big unemployment, lack of opportunities to network, to collaborate, a lot of free work, if I can say only a few. But at the same time, they are promoters of free expression. So that means that we have a 10-year, let's say, community now, where you have individual artists collaborating and in dialogue with policymakers, with academics. Similarly, let's say, to the exhibition that we heard before, but even in a less institutional setting. And this means that there are real opportunities for person-to-person collaboration, but also institution-to-institution collaboration. And another element, when we're talking about bridges of cooperation, why should we speak only, and this is the purpose of even International Film Festival, why should we speak only about collaboration between two peoples or 3 or 4 peoples within the Balkans? What is really important is that we all together become more extrovert. So in my opinion, and I would like to end my intervention in this, we have to consider about identification, common identification on common issues. And when we work on common issues, whether this is the economic crisis, whether there is the need to build an artistic project, or whether there is the need to collaborate around climate change, like issues that they go beyond national mix, beyond 19th century and 20th century national mix, and into 21st century governance issues. These are the issues that can help collaborate, and also they can help the two peoples and around them, the other peoples of the region, to be more extrovert collectively, which is what's needed in reality in order to prosper collectively. So we go beyond the one-to-one match and into collaboration for contemporary issues. Thank you very much.
Ms. Caridi? Ms. Caridi, can you hear us? Okay. Thank you so much. Yes, okay. I really like that you said the culture is the way to create the dialogue. I do agree. Now we'll go to our fourth guest speaker. It's my honor to introduce you, Ms. Tomislav Osmanli, Macedonian author, screenwriter, playwright, and a journalist. He's born in Bitola. Also, I'm born in Bitola. But he is author of more than 28 books translated in different languages, fluent in Greek. Not as me, I only know few words, because Bitola is really near to the Greek border. It's 70 kilometers from the Greek border, and we are really, lots of people coming from Bitola are actually speaking Greek. There was a really big opportunity for the people to learn, but yes, not all of us speak the language. So, Mr. Osmanli, your perception, through your experience, what do we need to undertake for building cultural cooperation between Greece and North Macedonia? From your personal point of view, please, your keynote.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on your forum. Αξιότιμοι συνάδελφοι από την Ελλάδα, dear young friends, dragi priateli, it is a special pleasure for me to participate in a great bilateral cooperation initiative like this one. And this is not just a polite phrase to open my speech. All of my life, I have been committed to inclusiveness and to fostering interethnic collaborations. As for the Macedonian-Greek cooperation, I am deeply interested, not only personally, as a devotee to both cultures due to dual personal identity and affiliation that I own. My mother was Greek, I told you previously. I have been equally raised and brought up both here and there, or there and here, whichever direction that is. For me, they're equal. But essentially, as a writer, as an editor, professionally engaged in the field of arts and culture for 4 decades, and working in several important North Macedonian media, specifically for establishing collaboration in the field of the artistic exchange. In short, I have contributed to it as much and as many times as I had been given opportunities to. Regrettably, dear friends, those examples of the mutual cultural exchanges and collaborations can be counted on the fingers, let's not say on the fingers of one hand, but pretty much on our 2 cultural palms, which unfortunately shook hands much less often than it should be the case between first neighbors. And those cultural exchanges, let me say, were usually politically motivated, initiated, and were fostered, and as acts of cultural diplomacy mainly. Culture is still dominantly dependent on politics on the Balkans, regrettably. It is dependent all over the world, but especially and dominantly on the Balkans. And rather than as a regular process of exchanging artistic values and artistic goods. And because of that, they were and still are happening pretty much sporadically or campaigningly. We unfortunately have never established a line of regular mutual cultural communication, so I strongly believe that we ought to establish mutual cultural centers both in Skopje and in Athens on serious national levels, and not locally or regionally, for example, in Bitola or in Thessaloniki, covering certain political or rather ethnically interested or interesting aspects for both states, but as a centralized politics of mutual understanding and cultural cooperations. I have the big picture in front of my eyes, which is to dynamically promote and exchange primarily the elite and secondly the alternative art and cultural achievements of both sides. This is, of course, because of my age, giving the priority to the elite culture, but it is very important since the elite culture showed good results in the cultural exchange between the two countries and cultural identities. As you all know, up to now, a number of obstacles had been dividing us or keeping us aside of each other, ideologically, politically, etc. And many things came to us with the dubious streams and the inertia. Ms. Caridi put it so strongly and so clearly, that aspect. The inertia of the old times, the historical divisions, the confronted political interests, the interethnic relations, at the end of the day, producing hard, sporadic, as I said, and insufficient cultural cooperation and exchange. And sometimes that had almost terrified me is that this state of things, and rather the state of minds, was quite comfortable for the general nationalistic hardliners in both societies, ready to accept incidents rather than any form of regular and deeper cooperation. Incidents in their nourishment as the cooperation and the mutual communication exchange, which is of course quite okay at one level, the exchanging goods and exchanging touristic experiences and mutual exchange of goods, but it's quite primordial and thus insufficient. In the new political spirit, I think we're slowly overpassing these inertive and oftentimes processes. I had prepared a list and a detailed list of mutual cooperations, but due to the time, I will not go deeply in the theme, but I would like to continue putting some accents in this speech of mine. I would like to mention that we had cooperations in the field of the theater, quite productive. In the field of the serious music, very poor. In the film of the platform of the arts, we have poor examples. Also, we have some good examples in the field of literature and exchanging literary concepts and products. In words and mutatis mutandis, this would be a list of mutual cultural exchange and cooperation for a period of 75 years realized between the two neighboring countries. I would tell you again, quite poor one for our vicinity and for our needs, completely insufficient, and as can be easily concluded by the examples, regrettably I could not show them due to the economy in time. The cultural cooperation between the two countries has periods of surge as well as the general relations between them. An attitude of caution towards one another often prevailed, sometimes even periods of a complete silence prevailed. There were periods when the Greek South was forgotten as a cooperative field, perceived one day from the Macedonian side, perceived one-dimensionally and exclusively through the ethnic prism of engagement over the minorities' status and identity and so on and so forth. And in Greece, periods of reinforced expression of old resistance to the north, such as Ms. Karidi again had put it, being provoked by the pathetic antiquization here lately, as Mrs. Amigdalou had touched the theme, which is I am strongly and was and still am strongly opposed, because I've written at least 6 or 7 books over the city of Skopje, and it's a very different city I was imagining and I'm nostalgic towards, but that's another item. And being provoked, speaking now of my Greek side, being provoked by the pathetic antiquization, as I said, lately here, but also under the old and overpassed ideological patterns for Greece's north as a domain of permanent danger and irredentism. Thus, without the cultural communication and rapprochement, nationalisms of both sides reinforced each other and gained room for action, for new dubiousness, and interruptions primarily of the weak cultural correspondence, which with great effort established the open spirits of both cultures. With the signing of the Prespa agreement, in my viewpoint, an act of mutual goodwill and understanding, a very productive one, a new platform for artistic and creative cooperation, and in general for cooperations in general had been set up between the two countries and cultures and economies and so forth. Now the horizons of the naming of our country as the Republic of North Macedonia are open, and the Macedonian language and the national identity are confirmed by the bilaterally and internationally accepted document, thus opening new and unlimited spaces for cooperation of all kinds, starting economic, business, defense, tourism, traffic, but above all, the artistic and cultural exchange and cooperation. I insist on the item. Now, the cooperation depends on the real will and not on the so-called objective obstacles as the ones indeed exist in the past. The two countries have much more in common than before. Set in pluralist systems, both foster Euro-Atlantic values, both being members of the same defense alliance, if you will, both participating, which is very important, in European projects and cross-border initiatives, both being members of European cultural organizations and endowments. In both countries, there are great artists from all the generations, young and emerging ones, as well as experienced and affirmed authors, really to cooperate and contribute to the artistic exchange of the most precious, the cultural goods, values, and future of the communication between the two countries. It is now up to all of us, and especially up to you, young experts in business, in sciences, in the fields of culture in particular, to open the processes of connecting and exchange in the whole range. Sorry. I'm really sorry. To both countries, to the international funds to which they have access, to national cultural institutions, to producers, to theaters, museums and galleries, to publishing houses, as we heard here, to academic institutions, faculties and architectural endowments and museums, and even to economic entities operating from one country to another, as Greeks do, Greek companies do here in Macedonia, and really do help some processes and some already organized cultural events. That is the process to support and sponsor the process of cultural rapprochements. It's up to them, up to the state, up to the economy, and up to the economy that is producing goods and values in this country, especially. Not only as cases of collective publications, such as the mentioned anthologies. Excuse me, I didn't mention 3 anthologies have been published. 2 in Greece recently, one of prose, another of young poetry, and one of the contemporary Greek poetry in Macedonia that I have the opportunity and the honor to be the translator of. But also an exchange, literary translations, film and media collaboration of authors, books, movies, stage realization of capital works by prominent authors, one of which will be offered to public recognition in the neighboring national country mutually. I'm talking about getting to know each other more deeply because I am convinced that in general we still know each other quite superficially. Our more essential acquaintance must go through all kinds of collaborations which are encouraged, and this bilateral conference, by their most delicate, and I am convinced the most essential part, is the intensive cultural acquaintance through works by eponymous authors of all the generations. Comprehensive cooperation is a visa for the future of European values, to which both countries and cultures strive. That is why I support these exchanges to be numerous, to refer to the work of young people, but also to well-known authors who have already affirmed names and serious creative bagage. Among us, the culture was not always a domain that merges, especially when it implies ethnic contents. As language, as in my domain, I'm and with the authors writing in certain national language, sometimes a language that has not been gladly accepted, tolerated, maybe, but not gladly accepted. The culture, but it is of cardinal importance for us to bear in mind that the culture is a domain that unites and bridges differences between people under one condition. Whenever there is goodwill, inclusiveness, and positive intentions towards the other, the different one. Abundant emotion in art, but open-mindedness and rationality in the cultural policies, that would be my point. I also support the goodwill, striving to creatively express the rich and colorful Balkan art emotiveness and the European rationalism in fostering the intercultural relation as a person who has accumulated in himself both identities, both languages, both cultural expressions, both national affiliations in the unifying European vision of values. Thank you. Να είστε καλά και να είμαστε όλοι μας καλά. Σας ευχαριστώ. Благодарам.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Mr. Osmanli, thank you so much. Yes, the cooperation is now based on the free will, on a real will. Now we'll hope that we will have more time for discussion and that you can share more of the achievements and results of the concrete cultural cooperation between these two countries. And now we're going with the final guest panelists. I'm really glad that I can introduce Miss Maria Tsantsoglu. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce your name as I should. Metropolitan Organization of Museum of Visual Arts in Thessaloniki. But Miss Maria Tsantsoglu will be together on the panel with Miss Sirago Tsiara, also from the Metropolitan Organization of Museum of Visual Arts of Thessaloniki. A little bit more about Maria Tsantsoglu. She is the director of the State Museum of the Contemporary Art in Thessaloniki, Greece. Her research field and publication mostly refer to the period of Russian avant-garde. She has specifically dealt with subjects such as synthesis of arts, visual poetry, art and politics, as well with Russian and Greek contemporary art and contemporary art in Caucasus and Central Asia. She is also, in her educational background, you can see Lomonosov as one of the universities she attended. Miss Irago Tsiara, also from the Metropolitan Organization of Museum Arts of Visual Arts of Thessaloniki. She is a curator, art historian, director of Thessaloniki Center of Contemporary Art, part of the State Museum of Contemporary Art Kostakis collection. Tsiara studied art history at the Aristotle University in Thessaloniki, social history of art, and at the University of Leeds, and complete PhD in public art and national memory in Greece. Please take the floor and correct me if I didn't pronounce your surname as I should. The floor is yours. Miss Maria, I will start with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation, and of course, congratulations for the initiative. As you said, we represent Momus with my colleague Irago Tsiara. Momus is a cultural organization for visual arts in Thessaloniki, which is a platform actually of 4 museums: Museum of Modern Art, Museum of Contemporary Art, the Photography Museum, and the Alex Milona Museum in Athens, and also with one experimental center for the arts, which makes it a big organization located both in Thessaloniki and Athens. Now our time is limited, so let me be brief and speak about some guidelines and objectives of our cooperation with North Macedonia and with our Macedonian colleagues and artists, so that Irago Tsiara take the floor and speak more concretely about our common projects. We consider the cooperation with North Macedonia strategically important, and we pursued it seriously and successfully 3 years ago, not only out of self-interest, but because this could mutually enrich our relationship. My colleagues at Momus and myself met exceptional, creative and inspiring people in North Macedonia, and I am especially speaking about the colleagues from the Museum of Contemporary Art of Skopje, who also sought a substantial cooperation with us, but I'm sure that this practice applies to other institutions as well. Now we do have the best possible cooperation. We are very proud to be partners with big prospects for further mutual cultural events. I believe that cultural heritage can be the best example of cultural dialogue and cooperation when it is not limited to the national narrative, and of course when it is not interpreted to serve narrow national purposes, especially when there are similar features of cultural heritage such as music, folk dances, fairy tales, as it often is the case in the Balkan region, as we know. And also when there are many and surprisingly creative and energetic communities of contemporary artists in both countries. I believe that culture can be defined as a tool for better understanding and defense of humanitarian values. It speaks an all-human language, and nations contribute to their cultural achievements to this, with their cultural achievements to this universal language. In this sense, cultural exchanges contribute to the building of a better future. Our museums are very open to provide young artists, curators, and other professionals in the fields of culture from Greece and North Macedonia with a networking base as well as a platform. We have welcomed the mobilization of artists and professionals for exchanges and collaborations. Performance artists from North Macedonia have been invited in 2018 and 2019 in Thessaloniki, and the same happened twice in Skopje in 2019 with Greek performance artists that were invited there. I want to say that it is only a maximum 2.5 hour distance, driving distance between Thessaloniki and Skopje. So everybody understands how easy it is to communicate. We can do that in the course of one single day, and we've done it very often before COVID, I mean. Right now, Momus does have a strategic program for a sustainable collaboration with North Macedonia. We have worked this together with our partners in the field of visual arts, and especially with the Museum of Contemporary Art of Skopje. And this program has three guidelines. Number one is the exchange of know-how between our museums. Number two, a collaboration of networking that will ensure the feasibility of residencies and exchange model for artists and professionals in the field of culture among our countries. And Siragotsiara could say a few words on that in her speech. And number three, a collaboration on sustainable strategies of not only organizing common projects, but also on financing common projects. Through mobility and exchanges of collections, exhibitions, specialists and artists, we aim to build a common dynamic future for our cultural development, which can be seen as a very good example with a pioneering contribution to Europe's cultural integration. The organization of two exhibitions, one produced by the Museum of Contemporary Art in Skopje and presented in Thessaloniki under the title All That We Have in Common, and the other produced by Momus, the Museum of Contemporary Art, and presented in Skopje, entitled Am I That Name or That Image, gave the first incentive of a case study. Other collaborations will follow that will embrace the culture of all of our region and countries, and we believe that what unites us is much more and much more important than what might separate us. So I spoke generally about a strategic, and now my colleague Siragotsiara, who is the director of Momus Museum of Contemporary Art, will speak more concretely about these projects. Thank you.
So, after Maria finished, it's now my turn to say thank you for having us with you. And this is a very good opportunity, I think, to share common experiences and maybe learn one from the other, from our past and from what we're doing and what changes the last years. I would like to start by sharing an opinion about contemporary art. What Maria mentioned before about cultural heritage, which is a common, let's say, language, is very important. But even more in the field of contemporary art, I would say that the fact that that artists themselves use common languages, artistic languages, based on the way they work with image, the text, with techniques, sound, all these media that they use are already universal languages. So this is a common field on which we could build in order to strengthen our relationships, the fact that these common languages already exist. So the idea that we have more things that we have in common and we share was the original idea with which Mira Gatsina and Jovanka Popova, our colleagues from the Museum of Contemporary Art in Skopje, came to us and asked for this collaboration. This was something that was built from previous relationships, because I have to say and to stress that even the beginning of the Biennale of Thessaloniki, this international exhibition that happens every 2 years, started as a will, an effort to learn more about our neighborhoods from Greece and to build stronger relationships. This is not something that happened only the last 2-3 years, as I'm going to present to you, but there is, I think, a tradition of the last 20 years that Thessaloniki especially is very much devoted to this effort to research this common field and to learn more about our neighbors, because we realized the fact that even if we are so close, as Maria mentioned, only 2 hours and a half driving distance from Skopje, for example, and North Macedonia, and even if we have so many things in common, the fact is that we know so little about each other. So this first exhibition happened in the summer of 2019, almost 2 years ago, and it lasted until September 19. It was a selection of contemporary artists from the curatorial aspect of Mira Gatsina and Jovanka Popova from 9 countries, including the works from Anna Adamovic from Serbia, Lucezar Boyachiev from Bulgaria, Ibro Hazanovic from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Alban Muja and Flaka Haliti from Kosovo, Ahmet Ogut from Turkey, Maria Papadimitriou and Antonis Pitas from Greece, Renata Polyak from Croatia, Henri Sala, an Albanian artist who lives in France, Velimir Zernovsky, Yael Kalovsky, Kristina Ivanovska, and Georgia Jovanovic from North Macedonia. This curatorial selection, as you may already have understood, questioned the importance of problematizing the notion of common in art, just as in the common experiences at a time when the ruling politics and the dominant patterns of thinking seek to emphasize the insisting upon differences. The presented works, the works that were presented in the Museum of the Experimental Center for the Arts in Thessaloniki, were trying to understand and recall recent stories and present present experience. The fact that we can understand better the way that we are constructed and we live our present through the integration and the experience of the past was very much, I would say, the common guideline between these artistic stories. Even though there were so many artists from different countries, the exhibition raised the question if it was possible to overcome a general uncertainty through political action and the struggle for the common good, an effort to rethink, I would say, the future of the region through the access and address to common experiences. And now I would like to stress an idea that already has been mentioned, that we can build these relationships stronger and more effectively based on shared values and exploring the condition that we are together, I mean the political and the cultural organizations mostly, now in the present. Because the fact is that we realized through this collaboration that we share not only stories, common stories, but common problems in the present. Between these problems, I would stress sustainability of cultural organizations and projects, which is a problem, an everlasting problem, very difficult for the last 10 years of the financial crisis. The second exhibition that came as a result of this collaboration was the other way around. It was an exhibition that was organized from us, from the Center for the Experimental Arts in Thessaloniki. I was the curator together with Domna Gunari and Irini Papakonstantinou, who worked again in the same time for the Center of Experimental Arts. And this exhibition was presented to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Skopje in September 2019 until October for 1 month. So the idea was then to start by the notion of the name. Of course, you understand that this word, the name, was such an important issue at the time of the agreement. And we thought that what is the name? I mean, what is the concept that, and what is the notion that defines contemporary human beings? People are defined by their name, the name that is given from their family. Are they defined from their origin, their profession, their gender, sexuality, social class, religion, ethnicity, individual or collective memory? Are these properties still so strong, or is it an age, a time, an era that all these properties are reconsidered and processed in a new way within the context of the images that we construct and project in the social media and in the, in all these platforms in which we construct an identity of ourselves to a real one, or is it a constructed one? This was another question. How real is the identity that we project, or a constructed identity? And it is still valid, this old distinction between real and produced. So the way that self and identity is produced and reproduced in this time and culture of digital mechanisms of correspondence and of communication was the real issue that we examined through the works of many artists who participated in this exhibition and was presented in the Museum of Contemporary Art in Skopje. I would like to mention, of course, their names: Oleg Mavromati and Boriana Rosa from Bulgaria, Rena Radl and Vladan Zeremic from Serbia, Belgrade, Evangelia Basdekis, Kyriaki Goni, Maria Ignataki, Fenia Kotsopoulou, Virginia Mastrogiannaki, Eleni Milonas, Natasha Papadopoulou, Vivi Tsionga, Alexandros Plomaritis and Tomas Diafas from Greece, Filippo Berta from Italy, James Bridle from Britain, and Mahita Katari from Morocco, Marilou Ponsin from France, and Ira Valdron, originally from Russia and living in France. You see, this, the idea of this exhibition was not to emphasize national identity, but the shifting condition of changing identities and fluidity, not only in terms of gender and ethnicity and cultural memory, but also in terms of the digital transformation, let's say, of identities that takes place in the current culture. And I think that this is a very, I would say, solid terrain, a solid field for the reimagination of possible relationships in the future. I would like to finish this presentation by mentioning what, saying a little more about what Maria mentioned before, our future plans. Our future plans, which were already discussed for the previous summer, that we had decided to organize together with Jovanka Popova and Mira Gatsina a summer school for young artists and curators, in order to this summer school to take place again as a shared project in Skopje and Thessaloniki for 1 month, so that we could be together and live together, which is a very important thing, I would say. If you can share real time in real space with people, and we would try to discuss and imagine future projects based on the ideas of commons and how this idea of commons changes identities, collective memory, and sustainability. Of course, the pandemic situation has changed all our plans, but I strongly believe that when things return to and we can have access to personal relationships again, we will make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Miss Chiara, can I say that we should work and to base everything on it? The cooperation can be based, cultural cooperation on the shared values, not only in the stories, but also the common problems on the present. What I catch up from your presentation at the end. Now, thank you so much. Now we are going to Zoom. Hello, Zoom friends. Hi. How did you like the discussions? Now we will open the floor for your question. Please use opportunity and ask questions to our distinguished guests. Do we have something that you would like to share? Someone? No one? Okay, I cannot see from here. Miss?
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Yeah,
Can
my
you
name
please?
is
Yeah, thank
Aili,
you.
and I'm a member of the Cooperation for the Common Future and the Greek team. I would like to congratulate all of you and thank you for your time and your brilliant ideas. And I would like to address a question to the last speakers that were coordinating programs in the Museum of Modern Art in Thessaloniki. And I would like to ask you, because this is a very important question to our team. We think that we can introduce sensitive and important and difficult political issues through art and through the arts in general. So how can we know for sure that we can cooperate and we could maybe overcome the obstacles and barriers of our countries, and how can we, let's say, is there any program or seminars or summer schools that we could participate into so that we can know how to really address these issues in a creative manner? Because of course artists know by first hand how they can relate to these issues, but what can we do as youth organizations that we want to address them via the arts, but we don't have the background, at least academically, to know of how can we address them?
Miss Egli, thank you for your question.
This is a question for me or Maria?
Yes. Or all of the speakers? Miss Egli? Okay. I will give a floor to all of the speakers who had opinion on this to share it. Miss Chiara Sirago, please.
Okay. One answer to your question that comes in my mind right now is that I would ask you to share the activity of our museums, even now that we're closed for the public, but we have a lot of programs, digital programs, that we try to share ideas and feelings about the works of our collection, about the exhibitions that we have hosted. For example, the last exhibition that was hosted in the Center of Experimental, for the Experimental Center for the Arts was entitled Honest Illegals, and was about the art of people who are in prison. So this was a very important exhibition on human rights and how art can still be productive under these circumstances. And we have some programs that you can participate. Together we look, it's the title of the program, where we invite through the Zoom, of course, platform, everybody to share their opinions on these social and political problems that the artistic works and the exhibitions raise. Another case was the exhibition that we finished, that was in the Museum of Contemporary Art when the COVID pandemic closed us. It was called the Map of Racist Violence. and we had in view, we had in the museum a lot of drawings by artists who resisted towards the violence of the Nazi Golden Dawn party in Greece, and presenting all these acts of violence. So through, if you can follow our program, when the museum will open, of course, in real space, and right now through this digital activity, you can enter these discussions that are very, very basic and very central to the agenda of our museums, exhibitions and artistic works that have to do with human values, with civil rights, gender identity, and things that I believe are all are in common interest and values.
If I can build on Mrs. Tsiara's intervention, this is Konstantina Karidi. Thank you for your question. So I think that what we heard was an excellent example of the opportunities that there are available. But the problem in our experience as Balkans Beyond Borders is that artists in particular, they don't have the money or the resources often to look for this kind of opportunities. Non-artists, they definitely don't. And there is a lack of, let's say, collaboration between them. As you said, you're a youth organization, so you're saying, how can we use or help art? So in Balkans Beyond Borders, which is exactly what we've been doing. And I would say we're legitimately a regional or international organization in this respect, and would be happy to help you in this. I think it's really important to invest some time to connect, let's say, these bigger initiatives to connect museums, for example, from around the region or from the two countries with individual artists or smaller organizations, or even, let's say, universities, as we have here, like across, let's say, departmental, if I may say, for lack of a better word, collaboration. And then the second thing is to remember that art is free. So you asked, what can you do as a youth organization? The thing is, we do talk in the name of art, but also in our experience, and this is a very important line that we need to keep, is we can commission, for example, potential works or through a theme, but a theme always has to be free enough, in my opinion, to allow for artistic expression. Sometimes artists, they don't necessarily want to express themselves around huge political issues, right? They're just inspired by something. So choosing, let's say, a contemporary topic can allow a lot of interpretations, and that's interesting. So there's a lot to be said about collaboration across levels and about helping to network between different institutions, bigger and smaller, to allow for a better dialogue. That would be a proposal, and this is something that can be done. To give you a very concrete example, as I said earlier, the Balkans Beyond Borders Film Festival happens annually under a theme, exactly in order to provoke conversations, but it also moves from city to city in order to embody this idea of mobility and collaboration. And we decided 2 years ago that we would return, first of all, every year in Athens in order to act, let's say, as a meeting point. But we also tested something that was very strong. We created a day of networking between artists who were invited in the festival, and we actually paid for their expenses exactly because they don't have the opportunity to often come, with Athenian institutions. So suddenly you have this like forum, this day basically of collaboration, and we had the support of the Athens Culture Net to do that, which is a municipal organization that is unique in Athens. But it's a good idea basically to help the network between bigger and smaller institutions and individual artists to facilitate this expression, and also to facilitate access to funding, as I said. And the third and last thing that you can do, and again, we can help in that, is to provide some kind of training to artists, because this is the group that we're talking about now, for them to be able to actually, let's say, submit funding proposals or collaborate and use the opportunities that are available, because often they don't know what's out there. That's that.
Thank you. Someone else from the panelists, if you want to share, please do it on this question. If not, we are going to ask our audience from Zoom. If you have maybe questions, please do it. The time is now. Can I see raising hands? No, I cannot. Do you have something to share? No one? Okay. I'm just asking because I cannot see from here if someone, I didn't give opportunity to someone. Okay then. Thank you so much. You lied to me. You said previously at the beginning that you are prepared and that you will ask questions. Now we'll go to the key points. Our panelists, thank you so much. Let's give the floor, like, what did you actually, what you will take from this conversation? A final, just to share a key point, just 1 minute. You can start, please. Ivanovska, can we start with you?
What we will take further from this conversation, that we should collaborate more.
Or yes,
that we should
or
use
just a key
every,
point if you have for this discussion.
Every opportunity, that we are very close to each other and we should use this, and there are many ways to, if we do have an idea, if we do have a project, there are many ways to realize this project. As the ladies from Thessaloniki said, there is a fruitful collaboration between the Museum of Contemporary Art. I happen to know this, and I was also involved in one of those projects. So I think that we should always seek for a topic, for a possibility, and then as in our case with Calliope, the institution will eventually support. If there is a potential, if there is a how to say, if there is valuable content, that eventually it could be realized, sometimes with a lot of effort and very little money, but I think that we shouldn't give up, that we should collaborate by all means.
Thank you so much. Yes, Ms. Karidi, do you have something to share as a final key point from this discussion?
I kind of feel I made the final key point in my response to the question. That's why I didn't want to speak more. But I just want to highlight how interesting it was for me as members of Balkans Beyond Borders to hear the different initiatives and how they can kind of spring to life, because this has been a similar experience I've shared. But also how important it is to consider that we are trying to address difficult issues that they affect people's lives, like Mr. Osmanli very clearly kind of described as well. So I'm just trying to take the synthesis along with me, and maybe make the point again that it is good to try to create collaboration opportunities between different institutions across levels, basically, in the two countries, if we want to advance collaboration and also go beyond and address the common topics. That would be, I think, my conclusion.
Thank you so much, Ms. Karidi. Yes, Ms. Mamigdalou, please. Yes.
If I may also jump in, I think that we witnessed today in this panel different types of different mechanisms to produce collaboration, and this is very important. In some cases, the institutions and the funding schemes are already there, and people can benefit from them and benefit from the support of fantastic institutions, like we saw in the case of Thessaloniki. And there, the spread of information and the networking is very important. So youth offices like the ones that you're trying to set up are very important hubs for spreading this information and bringing in touch people. But in our case, in our collaboration, it was the opposite mechanism. The content was there. I second what Anna said. Content is important. Whatever the mechanism, whether the funding is comes before the collaboration, or the collaboration comes before the funding. Content is important. If you have things that you love, and if you have things that you're good at, eventually you will get there. In our case, we had the idea, we had the content, and eventually the institutions came and embraced us, and we found the funding. So and in that second mechanism, in that second example, where the content comes first, what Konstantina said is important: the transfer of skills in order to be able to find funding, to be able to bring together an application, to learn how to apply, to learn how to communicate, to learn how to organize in a reliable way an event. This is a very important skill, to be reliable in how you use your funding. So I think that there are different ways different things to take away, and different examples of collaboration. But in both cases, I can't stress enough that doing what you love and what you're good at comes first. Find things that are meaningful and that can bring results, and then eventually the funding will come, or institutions will embrace it.
Thank you, Ms. Amigdalou, especially for sharing your point of view on what, yes, because different experience, you have, yes, different opinion on what is the best. But yes, thank you for sharing this. Final word from Mr. Osmanli. Can we have a final word, maybe something to share at the end with us?
Of course I have.
Thank you.
Well, I'm impressed by the brave way of thinking and the initiativeness of all the participants I had the opportunity to listen to today. And I'm really impressed because I'm used to the different ways of thinking. Of course, modern ways of thinking are always included. But the only thing today I heard is just that way, the inclusive way of thinking, the very cultural, the unique cultural way of thinking and of acting, the way of communicating, the way of linkages, the way of producing better future for both countries, nations, and cultures also. They're so similar, believe me. I know very well both of the cultures, and we still are in the position to try to know better each other, although in fact we know so very much about each other. We feel each other much better than we used to communicate through institutions. What is very important for me from today's discussion is that, and I'm very, very thankful for sharing this information, that the expositions, initiatives and cultural exchange are very much fostered between the two cultures and countries. But it's always interesting and intriguing for me, and very important as a writer, as an author, what happens to the cultural exchange, to the literary exchange, to the poetic exchanges, to publishing each other's important authors. In Macedonia, we know quite well some of the most important Greek authors. I'm not sure how and what Greek public knows about our literature being produced here. Things are bettering now, but I would really like to put a stress and to give an effort to the institutions here to better the quality of the literary exchange between the countries, such as I would kindly ask our friends in Greece to foster our literature, our theater, and our individual arts in giving better notion to the other culture. So what is very important for me today, it's that we're bravely going to the artistic themes and projects, and which would be one of my intentions now after being part of this conference, is giving impulses to the institutions to promote and to better the artistic exchange of any kind. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Osmanli. It was an honor having you here. Now, yes, we have. Can we have final words, opinion, or if you want to share something from Miss Tiara and Miss Maria? I will not pronounce your name again, not to make a mistake. Miss Maria, please share. Please unmute yourself. Yes, thank you. This is the most common sentence now in this Corona time, common sentence that we are using. So yeah, please do.
So yes, I just want to stress that our commitment is, of course, to continue with the plan of cooperation with our partners and with our Macedonian partners. Other collaborations will follow and will embrace the culture of our two countries and of the region. And as we hope, there will be good practices, not only for the benefit of our countries, but also as a pioneering contribution to Europe's cultural integration. We strongly believe to the work and to this common language of our artists of all arts, not only of visual arts, and of course not only fine arts, but applied arts as well.
Thank you so much. Miss Ciara, do you have something to share?
Yes, thank you very much for this discussion. For me, it was very important, and I would say more in the psychological and sentimental level, because everybody, all of us, we are through a very difficult period for the last year due to the Corona situation, pandemic, and the only way of resistance, because we cannot go to the square, we cannot meet there, the only way of resistance is to try to explore the ways we can communicate in this digital level. And I think that the lesson that we have learned this last year maybe could be very important for us to enrich our practice in the future. And with this common lesson is that we have very much in common, much more than separate us. And this is a universal experience that everybody shared. Even the situation of fear, of anxiety, and loneliness, the unknown future is that something that we collectively experienced. And maybe this is a common base that we could invest for the future and try to see what are the beliefs, what are the experiences, what are the values, a word that is being very much used during this panel, what are the values that we share? Because I strongly believe that they are much more than we thought. And this is a better way to learn one from the other. And I hope that it will be much more honest and much more personal and you know, optimistic in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Thank you to all of our guests today, our guest experts, professionals. I hope that you took a lot from them today. But this is the end of the conference. this is the end of the panel discussion, but it's not the end of the process, because still we will have a policy document with a recommendation, and you know what do we need to do, especially to the Zoom participants I'm now talking now. We should this recommendation transform into actions, not to forget about it, use all the opportunities was mentioned from our guest professionals here and experts. Thank you to all. We are going, yes, this is the final part of the conference. This is the final. We are closing our panel, Building Cultural Cooperation. We will have a lot of, I hope, we will have a lot of to say after it in these policy documents, from this discussion. But now, before we close, I would like to send a special gratitude to the team who organized this conference, and it's coming from the Youth Alliance. It's thank you to Metodia, thank you to Anelia, to Biljana. There is one person, it's called Biljana, very important one. She's always behind. You don't see her, but she's doing a lot of things with her team, and together with the volunteers, Andre, Nina, Nicola. And now, our special gratitude to those people who are actually creating this policy recommendation, who are creating this policy document. Andrea Ugrinovska and Marko Pankovski behind, you don't see them, but they are working a lot and they are contributing a lot to this conference. At the end, not to forget this media team here with Dobre and the rest of them. So, we say ciao and goodbye. And this is the end of our conference.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye, all the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.